In 2007, the quiet town of Redford, Michigan, was shaken by a crime it had never seen before. With just over 3,000 residents, it was the kind of place where everyone knew each other, and secrets rarely stayed hidden. Caroline Winters, a 55-year-old widow, had lived in Redford her entire life. Her home, nestled at the edge of the forest, was both a sanctuary and a place of whispered speculation. People believed she knew more about the town's secrets than she let on. But Redford's uneasy peace shattered on an August morning when 19-year-old Logan Miller was found dead near Caroline's home. His body, partially concealed beneath branches, bore signs of a struggle: strangulation marks on his neck, cuts on his arms. Someone had wanted him silenced. Sheriff Michael Walker, unaccustomed to such brutal crimes, called in an old colleague, Detective Jonathan Reeves from Detroit. Upon arrival, Reeves sensed an unspoken tension in Redford. Beneath polite smiles, the town harbored something dark. Rumors spread quickly. Some claimed Logan was last seen with a mysterious woman. Others hinted at dangerous dealings. But one thing was certain: everyone in Redford was suddenly on edge. Caroline, shaken by the news, felt a storm brewing. She had known Logan since he was a child, but now, for the first time, she feared that the town she had always called home was hiding something sinister. And Detective Reeves was determined to uncover the truth. The murder of Logan Miller shattered Redford's quiet existence. Fear seeped into every conversation, and the town's usual silence now felt suffocating. People locked their doors, whispered theories, and watched their neighbors with wary eyes. Sheriff Michael Walker, a lifelong Redford resident, now saw his community through a different lens, one of suspicion. The thought that someone he knew could be a murderer gnawed at him. Meanwhile, Detective Jonathan Reeves meticulously examined the crime scene. Broken branches, disturbed earth, and blood droplets told a clear story. Logan had fought for his life. The deep marks around his neck confirmed it. This was no accident. Someone had meant for him to die. The medical examiner determined Logan was killed around midnight. That meant someone in town knew more than they were saying. Reeves needed to start questioning, and his first stop was Caroline Winters. Her house sat dangerously close to where Logan's body was found. Though she claimed she had been asleep early that night, her answers were vague, carefully measured. Was it grief, or was she hiding something? Then came her daughter, Maggie Winters, who rushed back to Redford as soon as she heard the news. She was concerned about the town, about the murder, but mostly about her mother. Caroline had known Logan. Had she known more than she let on? Another name surfaced: Bobby Smith, a man with a troubled past, a reputation for violence, and a connection to Logan. He lived on the outskirts, kept to himself, too quiet, too distant. As Reeves pieced together the puzzle, the town held its breath. Doors remained locked at night, and eyes lingered on passing strangers a little too long, because in Redford, everyone knew each other, and that meant the killer was someone they knew too. Detective Jonathan Reeves knew time was against him. The brutal murder of Logan Miller had shattered Redford's sense of security, and fear had gripped the town. People locked their doors, whispered in hushed tones, and avoided eye contact with the police. Reeves had seen his share of crimes, but something about this case felt darker, more personal. His first step was to question those closest to the crime scene, starting with Caroline Winters. Her house sat dangerously close to where Logan's body was found. She denied any involvement, insisting she had seen nothing that night. But Reeves sensed hesitation, as if she was holding something back. He pressed further, bringing her in for questioning. Under the harsh lights of the station, Caroline remained composed, but Reeves noted every pause, every shift in her expression. She admitted that Logan often helped her around the house, but nothing more. Still, something felt off. Meanwhile, Sheriff Michael Walker worked the town, gathering rumors and whispers. He soon uncovered a different side of Logan, one that few had seen. Lately, the young man had been distant, avoiding old friends and spending time with people of questionable character. One name stood out: Bobby Smith. Bobby had a history: fights, run-ins with the law, a temper. Lately, he'd been even more reclusive, avoiding town altogether. Walker and Reeves agreed. Bobby needed to be questioned. At the same time, Margaret Maggie Winters, Caroline's daughter, arrived in Redford, worried about her mother. She knew about Caroline's connection to Logan, but insisted it was nothing unusual. She feared her mother was being dragged into something she had no part in. Determined to uncover the truth, Reeves turned to Logan's phone records. He needed to know who Logan had been speaking to in his final days. Somewhere in those calls, in those final moments, was the key to unraveling the mystery, and Reeves wouldn't stop until he found it. A critical break in the case came when Detective Jonathan Reeves traced one of Logan Miller's final calls to an unknown number. It belonged to Bobby Smith. That number, with a warrant in hand, Reeves searched Bobby's home and found exactly what he needed. In the garage, a rope. On it, traces of blood that matched Logan's. The evidence was damning. Bobby was arrested immediately. At the station, Reeves pressed him hard, but Bobby refused to break. He insisted the rope had been in his garage for years, that the blood was a coincidence. But Reeves knew better. There were no coincidences in murder. Still, something didn't sit right. The town of Redford breathed a sigh of relief at Bobby's arrest, but Reeves wasn't convinced the case was closed. If Bobby was guilty, why wasn't he cracking under pressure? And if he wasn't the killer, then who was? Sheriff Michael Walker kept digging, and soon a new side of Logan's life emerged. The young man had been secretive in his final months, staying out late, pulling away from old friends. What had he been involved in? And, more importantly, who had wanted him dead? Then there was Caroline Winters. After Bobby's arrest, she all but disappeared. She refused to speak to neighbors, ignored reporters, and barely left her house. Was it fear or something else? Reeves knew one thing for certain. Bobby Smith's arrest was just the beginning, because in Redford, the real killer was still out there. Rumors spread like wildfire. Was Caroline Winters involved in Logan Miller's murder? Some believed she had manipulated Bobby Smith, forcing him to kill. Others whispered about a deeper connection between her and Logan. Detective Jonathan Reeves needed answers. He brought Caroline in for a second interrogation, this time pushing harder. She remained composed, but there was tension in her eyes. She denied everything. Yet, her hesitation on certain questions only fueled Reeves's suspicions. Meanwhile, forensic results confirmed the blood on the rope belonged to Logan, but there was no trace of Bobby Smith at the crime scene. Was he being framed? Reeves dug deeper, analyzing Logan's phone records. A new name surfaced: George Evans, a man who had recently moved to Redford and kept to himself. When questioned, Evans was visibly nervous. He claimed he barely knew Logan, but his story was inconsistent, and he had no alibi for the night of the murder. At the same time, another discovery shook the case. Logan had borrowed a large sum of money from a local loan shark before his death. Was he tangled in something dangerous? The pieces weren't adding up. Was Caroline involved? Was Bobby just a scapegoat? And what was George Evans hiding? As fear gripped Redford, people locked their doors at night, knowing one thing for certain: the real killer was still out there, and Reeves was running out of time to find them. Detective Jonathan Reeves felt the pressure mounting. Redford was on edge, desperate for answers, but the pieces of the puzzle still didn't fit. The rope found in Bobby Smith's garage seemed too convenient. Was someone trying to frame him? Then there was George Evans. Reeves dug into his past and uncovered a history of shady dealings. Evans had slipped through the cracks of justice before, but this time Reeves was determined to pin him down. Bringing Evans in for another interrogation, Reeves played his hand. He mentioned Evans's ties to the underworld, watching as the man's confidence crumbled. Evans insisted he had nothing to do with Logan Miller's murder, but his nervousness told another story. Sheriff Walker uncovered a shocking lead. Logan was involved in illegal drug deals. He owed money to a dealer linked to Evans. The pieces were falling into place. Had Logan been killed to keep him quiet? But there was still one loose thread: Caroline Winters. What was her connection to all of this? Reeves knew she was holding something back. He brought her in for questioning one last time, determined to uncover the truth before the real killer disappeared for good. Detective Jonathan Reeves confronted Caroline Winters with the truth. Logan Miller was tied to George Evans' criminal dealings. Caught off guard, Caroline admitted Logan had confided in her about his troubles, but insisted she never realized how deep he was in. Reeves saw an opportunity. He brought Caroline and Evans face to face, hoping their reactions would reveal the truth. Evans cracked first, accusing Caroline of blackmailing him into killing Logan. But Caroline fired back, calling it a desperate lie. Their stories didn't match, and Reeves knew one of them was hiding something. Sheriff Walker uncovered a witness who had seen Logan with a man resembling Evans on the night of the murder. That was the final piece of the puzzle. Reeves laid out the evidence. Evans had killed Logan to silence him, then tried to frame Bobby Smith to throw off the investigation. With nowhere to run, Evans confessed. The town of Redford finally breathed a sigh of relief. Evans was sentenced to life in prison, but the scars of his crimes remained. Caroline, though never charged, became an outcast, her ties to the case forever staining her reputation. And as Reeves closed the file, he knew one thing for certain. In a town like Redford, secrets never stay buried for long. As the seasons changed, so did Redford. The town moved on, but the echoes of Logan Miller's murder lingered like a shadow in the streets. Meanwhile, in whispered conversations, in the wary glances exchanged between neighbors, Caroline Winters vanished from Redford's memory as quickly as she had left. Her name spoken only in hushed tones. Maggie returned to her own life, carrying the weight of her mother's past but determined to move forward. Sheriff Walker continued his work, more vigilant than ever, knowing that true safety required more than just solving crimes. It meant preventing them before they began. And Detective Jonathan Reeves. He walked away from Redford with another case solved, but a lingering sense that justice was never truly clean. Some wounds don't heal, and some truths, once uncovered, only lead to more questions. But in the end, life in Redford resumed. The town would forget, as towns often do, until the next secret came to light.